glance. Okay, here, these are GrandInvolve's goals. To improve the quality of life for older adult volunteers and children attending Title I schools by providing intergenerational educational activities, and also to increase the number of older adults who volunteer to help improve the educational outcomes of vulnerable students in Fairfax County. The GrandInvolve program brings older adults into our elementary schools where children have the highest financial needs and where many of the students do not speak English at home. Around here, the Title I schools have at least 55% of the children receiving free or reduced price lunches. And in Fairfax County, these same schools have the highest diversity of cultures and languages. Let me see if I can get rid of that. Okay, now can you see?
Now we see fine.
Okay. So our mission to support the education of our most vulnerable population through in-person and virtual volunteering, to reduce ageism by growing intergenerational relationships between our youngest and oldest community members, and to increase intercultural understanding. Many children at Title I schools do not speak English at home. In Fairfax County, over 30% of our population doesn't speak English at home. These children often face a disadvantage in school. And with GrandInvolve, our older adults have a much better understanding of the barriers that the children of immigrants face. Here's our history, and you can see that we're going into our 8th year. GrandInvolve was created to increase volunteerism at Fairfax County Title I schools. A pilot program was implemented in the fall of 2014 at Crestwood Elementary in Springfield. So Marcy has been with us from the very beginning. That first year, Marcy and I began at Crestwood. And other people too that may belong to your organization, but Marcy's on here and has been a great advocate for us right from the beginning. Buoyed by the success of GrandInvolve's program, 2 additional schools were added in the school year 2015 and 16, and an additional 3 schools were added in the school year 2016 and 17. In year 4, we introduced a pilot program of a regional model so that we could expand quickly into all the Title I schools in the Mount Vernon Magisterial District. That year, we added 10 schools in year number 4 with the help of Supervisor Dan Stork and Karen Corbett Sanders, who was the school board lead at that time. We added 10 schools in year number 4 with the help of Stork and Sanders, and both of whom marketed and promoted our program to their Mount Vernon residents. So we realized that we needed some additional structure to GrandInvolve as we were growing so quickly. So the next year we applied for and were granted our 5013C status, and we put together a board of directors. So we've only had a board of directors for a couple of years. GrandInvolve has always been and continues to be an all-volunteer organization. Even I am a volunteer. In 2019 and 20, when COVID hit us in March, we had over 160 volunteers. We actually had 164 classroom volunteers, and they were helping at 24 schools. And we had at that time 40 leadership volunteers who were coordinating the success and the expansion of GrandInvolve. Last year, we successfully pivoted to online volunteering. We were not allowed in the schools, so we did online volunteering, and we followed strict guidelines from FCPS. We had 9 schools that used our volunteers.
Something's
So
going wrong with my headphone.
So during the year of the pandemic, we were able to switch
I've
to
got stamp club tonight too,
volunteering.
so it makes sense to keep mine out.
But Jerry, we can hear you.
In the COVID year, we had 42 virtual volunteers. 42 people worked at those 9 schools. And we had 45 leaders in leadership. And we also sent 30 volunteers to assist with programs that were led by other local nonprofits, such as Cornerstones. So we're happy to say that we're back in the classrooms, or we will be back in the classrooms this year, as 15 schools have invited us back. So out of the 25 schools, 15 of them are saying, yes, please send volunteers this year. Our original expansion plans would have brought GrandInvolve to all of the Title I schools in the county by December of 2024. And we're a bit behind now because of the pandemic, and that has limited us to expanding to new schools. So just last night in our board meeting, we made the decision that all the volunteers that will be going into Fairfax County schools will be vaccinated. So we're only sending vaccinated volunteers to the schools. So the schools have a rule that the teachers and staff must be vaccinated, but they have not set that same rule for volunteers. We're voluntarily saying we will make sure that all of our people are vaccinated. So here's a picture of what we might do in a classroom. This is Suba, and he works at Crestwood Elementary, and he's reading to an entire class. Well, this is unusual because we actually usually have one child that we work with or a small group. But it's a good picture, so I put it in here because this does happen sometimes. So this next one is about the cultural diversity that we have here in the county. Okay, our students are multicultural and they speak more than 200 languages and dialects. Yeah, so as you can see, they speak 200 languages and they're actually from 204 countries. So Fairfax County translates their documents into 9 languages, and they do it to the most prevalent languages. The most prevalent foreign language in our elementary schools is Spanish. And the next most prevalent languages are Arabic, Korean, this is in order, so it goes Spanish, Arabic, Korean, Vietnamese, Mandarin Chinese, Amharic, and Urdu. So that's the order of the languages as they appear in percentages in our school. Our schools, however, do require that the children speak English in school. So even if they are brand new to this country, they're expected to speak English when they're in school, and they pick up the language unbelievably quickly. Within a couple of months, these kids are speaking fluent English. So what is a Title I school? You may be wondering why some elementary schools receive a Title I designation and what is a Title I school? Well, there are, so Title I schools receive federal, state, and local money, which enables them to provide additional resources. So I've already told you that a Title I school is a school where 55% or more of the children are eligible for free or reduced price lunch. There are over 140, I think it's 143 elementary schools in Fairfax County. Of those schools, 41 of the elementary schools were identified for Title I funding last year, and they haven't changed it this year. So the Title I funds are used to upgrade the entire educational program of the school. And the focus is on closing achievement gaps. So let's see, I think I've told you all the rest. The student body comes from households that meet the federal definition of poverty. So the federal government actually gives money to schools that are even less than 55% of the student body. I think it's like 38 or somewhere around 40% of the student body who's eligible for free or reduced price lunch, then they receive federal funds. But the local funds from the county come to the schools that have at least 55%. So, okay, so this is a map of Fairfax County, and I've identified only the Title I schools. So you can see this is according to magisterial districts, meaning that this is where your Board of Supervisors lie. And this area right down here, which is where we began our expansion, this is the Mount Vernon district, and they had 10 schools that were eligible for Title I funding. The next place we moved was the Lee District schools, and we are now serving all of the Mount Vernon and all of the Lee schools that want us. And this coming year, once we settle down after what's going on with COVID, and I'm hoping by next year, we'll be moving into the Mason district. We're right now in 4 of these schools, but this is the Mason district. We also have a couple of schools up here, and I think we have one in this corner too. So we tried to do it so that no matter where a person lives, if they want to volunteer for GrandInvolve, they'll be able to get to a school within 20 minutes or a half an hour at the most. We actually have quite a few volunteers from the Burke area, which is somewhere around here, who volunteer down here in the Mount Vernon Lee district. Marcy herself travels down to Springfield for volunteering. So our volunteers are generally willing to travel. So who needs our support? Some students have learning difficulties or are English language learners. They need support to learn to read. Okay. Many of our students did not go to preschool, and they lack the basic skills when they start school. I know Marcy actually works with the preschool students at Crestwood. In some of their homes, the parents work multiple jobs and are simply not home when their children are home. This was a great difficulty last year when the children were learning from home, and they did not always have proper supervision of being in school, because they were home and their parents, there was an older sibling taking care of them. So GrandInvolve connects students and their families to their greater communities and supports their education. Here's another picture, and this is more typical of what we do. We work one-on-one. So here you can see that the child is just, fascinated by her volunteer who's assisting her. And I know when I'm working in schools, the children, they want to sit right next to you, as close as possible. They ask me questions like, can I touch your arm? Can I touch your hair? They're just so anxious to be with their volunteer that they just love to sit right there. The children fight over who's going to sit next to us if we have a small group. So this is what you might do if you were classroom volunteering. You could be a reading volunteer, and that means listening to the children reading, not reading to them. It means listening to them read to you. We might be discussing the books with the student, encouraging reading comprehension, and generally encouraging an interest in reading. So we might be a math volunteer, and we could provide math skills games, which the teacher provides to us and says, play this game with the children. They're learning, addition up to 10 this week. And we work with small groups then when we do that. We could be a mentoring volunteer. Some of our volunteers actually work with the children in the classroom and then mentor a child like through lunch. We can be a kindergarten readiness volunteer, and this is what Marcy does. Helps the students develop concentration, focus skills, their fine motor skills, classroom behavior, and they assist in general with reading readiness. Well, we can be doing special projects with the teacher. Working on a project that the children are all working on and go from child to child helping them. There are 2 levels of volunteering with GrandInvolve. We have our school volunteers and then we have our leadership volunteers. The classroom volunteers work directly with the teachers and the children, and they are mentors, readers, math helpers, classrooms assistants, and they come in a structured time slot. For example, they come every Thursday at 1. Our prospective volunteers work individually with the school counselor to determine what their interests are and to match them with a particular teacher and class. So we have a volunteer that comes in and says, I want to do reading with second graders. Then our school contact, our school staff contact, we call them our point of contact, will match that person up to a teacher who can use her skills. So volunteering with GrandInvolve does not require any special experience on the part of the volunteer. We do have required training that our volunteer has to go through, anyone who's working with children, and this includes an orientation. And additional non-required training is available throughout the year. So we do have many volunteers in leadership positions, and those are opportunities for people who'd like to use their career knowledge and experience on a leadership team. Our leadership teams design and determine the future of GrandInvolve. So if you're interested in joining a leadership team, you might work as a liaison between a particular school and the volunteers that go to that school. Because each one of our 25 schools has a leader. We call them our SAT, School Action Team. But each one of our schools has an SAT who's in charge of being the liaison between that school and the volunteers. So that is a very important job for us. Last year during the pandemic, we had 9 teams and we had several subcommittees, and they were meeting weekly and they were designing the virtual volunteer program, and they helped to develop our current business infrastructure. So there was a great deal of planning that we needed to design the policies and the procedures, to research additional insurance, to look into a larger Zoom package, plan the training. Those were just a few of the things that were required for us to become a virtual program. So this year we have new challenges as volunteers who had been assigned to a school that is not accepting volunteers this year are now being assigned to different schools. So we have a lot of juggling that's going on right now. That's why we haven't begun our program in the schools yet. We hope to begin our program in early November and place the teachers, the volunteers with teachers. So of course this year there are new safety and security concerns with being in a classroom with children who are not vaccinated. And this prompted our new ruling that says that all of our volunteers will be vaccinated, or they will not go into a school. So what GrandInvolve achieves? We create lasting and meaningful relationships between our generations and cultures. We allow people of a grand age to share their talents and resources in activities which benefit both the individual and their community. So we feel that our GrandInvolve volunteers are leaving a legacy of good works. We're helping to destroy ageism. We improve their health and their general well-being, and we make Fairfax County a more livable community for all ages. So this is a proverb that we believe, okay, remember the African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child. We'd like to say that we're changing the world one child at a time. So if you're interested in making a difference in the success of your local schools, please contact the GrandInvolve team. And here is our contact information, which I'll leave up for a little bit while we're having some question and answers. So that is GrandInvolve, and just a quick version of what we're all about. And I'd like to open it up to questions if we have any.
Well, thank you very much, Dorothy. One thing that we had an opportunity here is a couple of folks who have worked with you volunteered to give a short kind of testimonial, I guess, between your talk and when we have some questions. So I thought, obviously, Marcy's got some experience, so perhaps she wants to say just a couple words about her experience with the GrandInvolve.
Well, I would encourage everyone to do this. It's been amazing to me to see some of these little kids, like Dot said. Some of them come in not speaking English. We had a little Vietnamese girl a couple of years ago. I didn't realize she spoke no English, and I was talking to her and she looked at me with this nice little smile and didn't understand a word I said. A couple months later, she was chattering with the rest of the kids. So you really see the growth, and you see the importance of working with the kids. And I think even doing the leadership stuff, because I'm an SAT at Crestwood as well, and working with the other volunteers is definitely worthwhile.
We have a great program at Crestwood too. We had over 30 volunteers there when COVID hit.
Kids, whose their parents don't speak English, do they pick it up in school? Is that where they're learning in school?
Yeah.
They're not allowed to speak their own native language in the classroom, but we do notice that, for example, the Spanish speakers, when they go outside, they tend to stick with the other Spanish speakers, and I know they're speaking Spanish to each other outside, but in the classroom, they're only allowed to speak English.
Now, how accepting are the other children who might be native, whatever how accepting are they when these children come in from other countries and they can't speak our language, they had different customs, etc.? Are they receptive to these kids?
Absolutely.
Are they bullying them, or what's going on?
We have a culture of acceptance in our schools. Our elementary schools, the kids are so used to children coming in from another country. Not only are they used to kids coming in from another country, but our children in our Title I schools tend to move from elementary school to elementary school. So, for example, they live in an apartment building along the Route 1 corridor, and then a new apartment building opens up and they've got a great rate. So, a lot of the families move to the new apartment building, and that means that children change schools. So this especially happens over at the northern area of our county, where people move in and out of like Loudoun County frequently. So the kids are used to kids coming in and out of their classroom all the time.
Dorothy, I was going to ask a question. I've done some volunteer work with the church and the Boy Scouts and stuff, and we went through a really extensive set of background checks and training and stuff. And so I was curious as to, I know this is an accompanied kind of thing, so you're in the classroom, and it's a little different from being, if you will, out hiking with kids and stuff. Can you talk a little bit about the requirements there?
FCPS, that's Fairfax County Public Schools, pays for each one of our volunteers to be background checked. And they go through an extensive background check, including FBI, police, and I don't even know what the others are, but it's an extensive background check. And if you come into GrandInvolve hoping to volunteer and you have top security clearance from the government, it doesn't count. you still have to go through the entire background check process with Fairfax County Public Schools. And we don't have anybody go into the classroom without going through that background check.
Yeah, and as far as training goes for working with children, sometimes they have, you know, a little thing, do's and don'ts and, you know, various.
That's where our orientation comes in. And, you know, we give guidelines to what to do. And we set forth the guidelines that FCPS gives us. So for example, last year when we had to do virtual volunteering, we had to, first of all, we had to learn how to use Blackboard, which was the platform they were using. Then we had to guarantee that we would never be alone with a child. There would always be at least 2 adults in the chat room with the child so that you know it's a counterbalance and you can be watching each other. Each one of the parents had to give permission for their children to work with us. And so there was a very strict set of guidelines last year. This year, our guidelines are that all of the volunteers must wear a mask at all times within the building. When you get into the building, there will probably be a health check, you know, like either a temperature check or some kind of an affirmation that you have to sign in the office that says you haven't had any symptoms, you've not been exposed to anybody. So there'll be something you need to do in the office. We're instructing our volunteers to wash their hands before and after they leave the classroom, and to practice whatever social distancing norms the school is practicing. So each school is different with the social distancing expectations, and we have to follow them. So each one of our volunteers receives this information, you know, at their orientation. And many of the schools also give an orientation when they get to the school. The school point of contact gives them some kind of a orientation also. So then we have trainings that are available to our volunteers that they can take during the year. Each month we have one like this past in September. In September, we had a training on social and emotional health of children and how it's been impacted by COVID. So we had that training. We are planning a training on simple reading instructions, what you can do when you're reading with a child, and what you should be doing with them as they're reading. So we do give training throughout the year in addition to our orientation.
Oh, fantastic. Because of our neighborhood mix here, I have a son of one of my neighbors who's a little bit of a special needs kid. Do you guys ever deal with that particular aspect of the community?
If the child is given to us to work with, then yes. You know, because when we're in the classroom, the teacher decides what children will work with. And she usually gives us something to do with them. So she'll say, here, this is a phonics game. These 3 children are really having trouble with phonics. Would you please play this game with them? So, you know, we play that game. Or the teacher will say, this child is really struggling with their reading. Would you take their reading books and would you have them read to you? As the child is reading, you know, we pick up difficulties that they're having. So, and I'd like to tell you a story about, a story I like to tell about a student that spoke Spanish at home and spoke very little English. And I was working with him in the Mount Vernon area of the county. And he was reading me a story and he kept on not reading or understanding the word path and the word gate. And I realized that he lived in an apartment building He's never really used a gate to get into his backyard, and he's never been on a path in the woods. So once I explained what these words meant, then he didn't trip up on them. But before that, he was tripping up on these words every time. So it's that kind of a help that we can be, that these children just are not familiar with a lot of our English words. And we have to be really careful not to use phrases like, it's raining cats and dogs or something like that, because children from another country just don't understand I think there's a word for them.
The idioms, yeah.
Idioms.
Yeah.
They don't understand our idiom. We have to be really careful, when you're speaking with them.
Sounds
So, but
fantastic. I
it's
think
very,
you could probably stop the screen sharing now. We can see each other
Okay.
a little better.
okay. All right.
There we go. At any rate, I've been dominating the questions. Other people should do something. I ask if you have any.
Well, Jim and Betty and Joni have both volunteered with Grandinvolve, or all three have.
Are they
John,
here?
You want to comment? No?
Jim?
Yeah, we're here. Yeah. Yeah, we'll give a little bit of our experience. We both volunteered down at the Newington
No.
Station.
The name of the school.
Fairfax.
Weren't you at Lorton
One-
Station?
Yeah, Lorton Station.
That's it,
that's yeah.
Lorton.
The one close to
Station.
Gunston Plaza. And the
And
time
the senior center down there.
because of the time that fit into our schedule when we were going there anyway for something else, I sometimes would work with like 2 or 3 things at one time because of the kids' lunch times. So I got a variety. I would, one year it was a kindergarten teacher who said, I want someone to help. So there I would work with them with usually reading, sometimes with, helping them do art projects, just walking around, whatever worked. And it was especially fun to, work individually as the child read. And, that was fun. And then when they would go to lunch, sometimes I would go down to the library and help the librarian. One year, the 6th grade teacher asked for a volunteer, and that was different. And I enjoyed, hearing how the 6th grade teacher did her lessons, and then I would walk around from group to group as they did an assignment based on it. So it was quite interesting. I got a lot of variety. But Jim did something different.
Yeah, I did something somewhat different, and Betty worked with more of the, what was it, the
Individual kids
and the
themselves.
younger,
Yeah, the kindergarten age,
kindergarten
and
age
first grade.
and first
The
grade,
second was first
and
grade.
I worked with the upper grades in the elementary school, 5th and 6th grade, and I was in the area of science and math, which are more my expertise. And a lot of what I did wasn't so much speaking to the students or working with them individually, but what I would often do would be correct their papers. The teacher found that to be the most helpful, if I would correct their homework papers and sometimes their test papers, and then give them back to the teacher. That would save the teacher a lot of time, and she could spend, let's say, more time actually teaching and working with the students. And one interesting experience that I had there once, I found something that I thought, this doesn't look right at all. It looks like the one of the things that they gave me to help with the correcting the test was the key to the correct answers. And I found one that this isn't right. That's not what I learned. I think this is an error. And I called the attention of the teacher to it. And she agreed that it looked, even though that wasn't so much her specialty, she agreed that it might be wrong. And I don't know whether they actually found it was indeed wrong or what, but she said she'd report it to the, I guess, to the publisher or whoever, where they got that particular material from. So you never know where you're going to be helping. Another thing that was a pleasant surprise. This was one of the times that I actually spoke to the kids. And I told them, I think it was like a career day thing. I told them about my career and my experience as a meteorologist. And as is often the case, not just with kids, but adults, the first thing they think or wonder about is, which channel are you on? They think that all meteorologists are on TV, TV weathermen or weatherwomen.
So what channel were you on?
Well, I was not on any regularly because I worked for the government. But I did get on TV a couple of times when there was, and not just a local channel. I think once it was network TV when there was a unusual storm and they wanted to interview a government expert, quote unquote, to explain why this storm happened or what contributed to it. And so that was kind of a fun experience too, as from my career. But anyway, to get back to the kids, after I told them that, I didn't regularly appear on any channel, but that I often, that the forecast that I worked on were then provided to all the media, the radio and TV and newspapers, and they would publish the forecast. But this little girl said that she hoped when she grew up that she could be a TV meteorologist herself. And I did my best to encourage her, and I don't know, she's probably about in 8th grade by now, and I hope she gets her wish because she sounded really interested.
Very good. Joan, did you have an experience you wanted to share?
Well, I volunteered with Marcy at Crestwood, and I remember doing a reading session for, I think it was a Dr. Seuss Day or something, and I was reading, as in the picture with Suba, reading a book to all of the kids while they listened. But my favorite thing was working in the after-school knitting program with Marcy, and that was a lot of fun. Just I was amazed at how many kids wanted to learn knitting at 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade, boys and girls, which was just very surprising to me, and how many of them picked it up fairly quickly and went on, each year that we would see people, the same kids coming back for, several years in a row and really progressing and making stuffed animals and, following patterns. And it was just great, so that was just really fun for me. And I miss that now. Obviously, we haven't been doing that the last couple of years with COVID, but hopefully we'll get back to doing that. I don't have a lot of patience, so I'm not sure I would be a good classroom helper necessarily, but I do enjoy the knitting as long as they stick to basic questions, because I'm not a very good knitter, but I can do the basics. So that was my experience, and I really did enjoy it.
I'd like to comment on the knitting program, which we have at several schools, but we started at Crestwood. The school had told our SAT, Marcy, that right in the very beginning, that they were hoping to get more parental involvement in after-school activities. And we instituted the knitting program as part of the solution to that. And we feel it's a great success because at that school, almost all of the children walk. And so this way, if they're in the knitting program, their parent has to come an hour and a half after school ends, pick up the child. They were meeting other parents whose children had a similar interest. The children were making friends outside the classroom who were in their community. And then the parents, we thought, and actually the principal told us that there was more involvement in the nighttime activities because the families felt more connected to the school. So we really felt a small thing like that made a big difference in the outlook of the parents at that school.
Oh, sounds fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Dorothy. We really appreciate it. And of course, I'm assuming that you would welcome any and all volunteers who feel they're capable of helping you.
You need to sign up through our website and say you're interested in becoming a volunteer. And we will place volunteers probably at this point, probably not until at least January, because we want to get our current volunteers placed first.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But
Well, with
yes,
the background checks, I assume there's some time anyway. So
it only takes a couple of weeks.
oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's quick. Mhm,
better than some places I've worked.
mhm.
So that is fantastic. And I actually am kind of intrigued myself. One final question I would have is we travel every so often. The every Thursday kind of thing, is that, I know kids like regularity. Is that pretty hard and fast, or is there some flexibility?
You know, there are other tutoring programs that happen across the country, and we feel that our tutoring program is very successful because when we go into the school at the first time, we tell them our people travel. You know, fully expect that, at least some of your volunteers will be gone the entire month of February. This happens, and, we feel that the flexibility of our program is one of the reasons that we are so successful.
Okay. Well, that's great. I think that because, you would hate to be in a situation where people thought you were going to come and, you had previous plan and whatnot. So is there a summer element to your program?
We quiet down during the summer, which is also nice. Nice for me and nice for the fact that we're all volunteer. We do plan for the next year during the summer, but we do not do any during COVID we did, and that was when we were involved in the Cornerstone program, which is another nonprofit, because they were giving summertime help. But normally we do not do any educational help during the summer because our help is in the classroom.
Okay. Fantastic. Well,
I have-
anything else, guys?
Going
Joe?
along with Mike's question in regards to not being able to be there consistently, do you have people go in and substitute for the people that are gone?
We don't, and that is because of consistency. The children and the teachers like to know who's coming in. So we don't have substitutes. If you are interested in volunteering, we'll get placed in a classroom.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much. And we really enjoyed and appreciated this. And I have recorded this. We have mixed results with our recordings, but sometimes they work out and we post them on our YouTube site. So if you don't have a problem with that, I would hopefully like to go ahead and post this. And
go ahead and let me know. If you do post, I'd like to see it.
sure, I'll be
Thank
happy
you.
to do that. Oh, not a problem. Okay, so I think that's pretty much the end of our